There are two gas stations across the street from each other, and one is $1 cheaper than the other. Do you go to the cheaper one or the more expensive one? I mean, the cheaper one, right? But when it comes to the stock market, most investors have been choosing the expensive one for the past decade, often without even realizing it. And in the long run, to nobody's surprise, that tends not to be a very good strategy. That's growth versus value investing in a nutshell. And in today's video, I'm going to show you why value investing has beaten growth by so much in the long run and could be in the early stages of an epic comeback that will catch almost every investor off guard and out of position. This is Ethan. I'm a CFA charter holder and investment professional, and my business partner Cal and I want to thank you for tuning in to the next video in our series on factor investing. So far, we've covered momentum and small cap investing, along with the top ETFs in each category, and today we're covering the value factor, which is the oldest, most researched, and most famous factor of them all. Warren Buffett built the greatest investment track record in history on it. His mentor, Benjamin Graham, basically invented it. Nobel Prizes have been won studying it, and entire firms like Dimensional and Advantis have been built around harvesting it. And yet, over the last decade, a lot of very smart people have declared it dead. But last time everyone was saying that was 1999, when we were on the verge of one of the greatest value resurgences of all time. And those who fail to learn from history are doomed to repeat it. So, to help you learn from history and become a better investor, we'll start with a quick primer on what the value factor actually is, just to make sure we're all on the same page. Then we'll dive into why it's produced better returns than the market for nearly 100 years, why it's done so poorly for the last 10 years, and we'll finish with why I believe value could be set up for one of its best decades in a long, long time. Starting with the primer. At the most basic level, the value factor means that historically, over time, cheap stocks have beaten expensive stocks. But cheap doesn't mean a low price. A $5 stock isn't necessarily cheaper than a $5,000 stock. What matters is how much you're paying for each dollar of what the company actually produces. Its earnings, its cash flows, its assets. That's where my gas example from the beginning comes in. Two gas stations, same product, one costs $5 a gallon, the other costs $4 a gallon. Maybe you'd say, well, the $5 gallon of gas comes from a better brand. And okay, that may be true, but you're paying 25% more for it. So will it give you 25% better performance? Probably not. That's the essence of value investing. And that's why it's called value investing, not cheap investing. Obviously, a beat up Kia is not better than a new Ferrari just because it's cheaper. And the same can be said for a terrible company that is about to go bankrupt versus a great company that's highly profitable and growing fast. The better company should be more expensive, but how much more expensive is the key question. It's all about getting value for your money, getting a good deal. The cheaper gas is a good value investment because even though it might be slightly worse in quality, the difference in price is much greater than the difference in the product. In the stock market, if you're not going to do your own in-depth financial analysis, which I see most people are saying are not, the simple, common ways to measure that are with the ratios like price to earnings, aka the PE ratio, price to book, price to cash flow. The lower those ratios, the less you're paying for each dollar of earnings or cash flow or whatever the company is expected to generate, aka the better value you're getting. Now, here's the part that trips people up. If the market were perfectly rational, there'd be no free lunch here. The expensive stocks would be expensive for a good reason, the cheap stocks would be cheap for a good reason, and it would all wash out. But that's not what the data says. According to Dimensional, going all the way back to 1927, value stocks have beaten growth stocks in the US by an average of about 4% per year. Why? The best explanation, in my opinion, comes down to human nature. Investors chronically overpay for exciting stories and chronically underpay for boring ones. Expectations for the popular, fast growing companies eventually get pushed so high that even really good results can disappoint them, while expectations for the unloved companies get pushed so low that even mediocre results can be a positive surprise. Stocks are priced based on their future expectations. So, value investing isn't necessarily buying cheap companies or bad companies. It's just investing in areas where you think the market is underestimating their potential. And that brings us to the elephant in the room. The last decade plus has been one of the worst stretches for value relative to growth in recorded market history. And now investors are heavily positioned toward growth. iShares investors have about $44 billion more money banking on growth, continuing to lead, than value coming back. Vanguard investors have about $38 billion more invested in growth than value. And QQQ, the darling of the high flying, tech loving growth investors, has almost $400 billion more than SCHD, the prized possession of the value oriented dividend junkies. And these are just a few of the many, many examples. All told, there are well over $1 trillion more invested in growth oriented ETFs and mutual funds in the US than in value oriented ones, and the biggest industry wide, style specific bet of all time. So, are growth stocks just better now because they've done well recently and nothing matters besides AI momentum anymore? I doubt it, because we've seen this movie before. This is the part where you learn from history and become a much better investor. In the late 90s, during the first tech bubble, and yes, I did say first, meaning I think we might be at another one now. So, yes, late 90s, during the first tech bubble, value went through an almost identical stretch to the one that it's been in recently. The only thing that mattered was the internet. PE ratios were broken since many companies didn't have earnings, aka profits. So, analysts everywhere switched to price to sales to justify continuing to ride the hype train instead of questioning what price might be too high to pay for a company that wasn't actually making any money. Famous value investors were retiring, closing their funds, or being called dinosaurs. Barron's magazine literally asked if the famous value investor Warren Buffett had lost its touch on the cover of their magazine in December 1999. Yet, less than 3 months later, in March 2000, the internet bubble burst and value went on an epic run, while growth actually went negative for a decade. Then we get to the next internet boom. The iPhone launched in 2007, and mobile 4G internet launched in 2010, this in the US. This combination of new technology and cheap financing from the ultra low interest rates that came post 2008 led to a golden age for internet related businesses. It just came 10 years after everybody thought it would. Social media, streaming services, food delivery, ride hailing, cloud computing, e commerce, and more. All these users of the internet created businesses that could never have existed without everyone having access to ultra fast internet at their fingertips all the time. Then in 2020, rates fell even lower and growth rates for a lot of these companies got even faster since digital businesses were pretty much the only ones that were allowed to operate. No one was going to the movies, but everybody watched Tiger King on Netflix. That lasted more than a decade until COVID ended, and so did its impacts on growth and value investing. Shortages of all kinds met surging demand to get out and do stuff, while the rapid growth rates of digital everything quickly became relics of the past. That led to high inflation, which led to rapidly rising interest rates. The low rate world that boosted growth stocks was over. Unprofitable businesses that had relied on borrowing to stay afloat suddenly didn't look so good now that they had to pay 8 to 10% interest rates instead of 3 to 5%, just as their growth rates were tumbling. On the flip side, boring, value oriented banks, which could lend that money at much higher interest rates, suddenly looked way better. So did energy, aerospace, and commodity companies that were in the dumps when planes weren't flying and all the factories were shut down. The value beat growth by over 33% in just over a year. But the party ended faster than usual because growth investors found a new shiny toy. It wasn't the internet, it wasn't the iPhone. This time, it was the launch of ChatGPT. Now, AI became the only thing that mattered, just like the internet, right? And so you should invest all your money in AI companies, just like the internet in the late 90s, right? Wink, wink. And value investing is dead? Well, not so fast, because since October 2025, investors have started to question how much return all this AI spending is actually going to generate for the hyperscalers. The Mag 7 has been essentially flat, and value has begun to dominate growth again. If only someone could have predicted that and put out a video on it 3 days before the peak. Here's what we said in that video. At some point, investors will start to question whether these investments will really pay off as big and as quickly as expected. This would be a great time to hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. And what we predicted in that video is pretty much exactly what's been happening. So the question is this just another short term correction like 2022, or is it the start of a longer, more sustainable value rally like the bursting of the first tech bubble? The short answer is I don't know, but I think it's more likely to be the latter. And here's why. 2022 was driven more by massively rising interest rates, which are a shorter term phenomenon. And the value rally ended because they stopped going up, and a massive new tech related investment opportunity emerged with the launch of ChatGPT. The 2000 to 2007 environment was driven by a reset of expectations around the pace of growth of the new hot technology, which had gotten way ahead of themselves. That's much more similar to the setup that we're in today. Forward PE ratios, meaning the price investors were willing to pay for each dollar of next year's estimated earnings, reached a record high gap between growth companies, the blue line, and value companies, the red line, in 1999. It reached the next highest premium in 2021, right before the big value rally, and 2025, right before the latest value rally. Now, you're probably looking at this chart and thinking, okay, Ethan, but now the valuation gap has gone back to normal and it's nothing like it was in 1999. Yes, but that's only half of the equation. Remember how in 1999, a lot of the internet companies weren't profitable, so investors started using price to sales to value them instead of price to earnings? Well, if there's no E, aka earnings, the price to earnings ratio can get pretty high. Now, in 2026, what's happening is that it looks like PE ratios aren't that high for growth companies because people are estimating that they'll have runaway record earnings growth compared to value companies. Remember, PE is the current price compared to the expected future earnings. So, sure, valuations might not be crazy, if growth companies grow earnings twice as fast compared to value companies as they ever have in the last 30 years, but if they don't meet those incredibly lofty expectations, then their prices are likely to come down. That could lead to a more sustainable period of value beating growth, much like we saw in the mid 2000s. But here's what almost no one is talking about that I think could be different than before. Even if AI doesn't have a big bust like the internet did, value companies could still go on a multi year run versus growth. Remember the big long term rally for growth companies versus value companies driven by all the users of the internet? Well, there certainly could be new fast growing companies that sprout up around AI too, but unlike the internet, which was set up in a way to create demand for all kinds of new services from internet related companies, AI is designed to help companies replace a lot of those services by themselves. There's a world where big AI models get commoditized, the profits disappear, and the biggest long term winners turn out to be the users of AI, like healthcare companies, banks, and a lot of other steady, low growing companies that suddenly find new ways to become more profitable. It's usually the enablers of new technology that win in the early stages and the users of it that win in the long run. I don't think that will change, but last time the users were mostly growth companies, and this time I think a lot more of the value could be captured by, no pun intended, value companies. By the way, we've been pounding the table on this general theme for a while now on this channel. On December 19th, 2024, we told you why we thought small caps, which had also been out of favor for a long time, were due for a resurgence. And I think it's a really nice setup for small caps over the next few years. So far, that's aged pretty well. Next month, on January 1st, 2025, we told you why international stocks, which had also long been out of favor, looked more attractive than they had for years. I just don't find US large caps very attractive right now. That one has aged even better, more than 20% excess return in a little over a year and a half. A few months later, we told you that biotech stocks could be one of the biggest winners from AI, while everyone was still pretty starry eyed for the Mag 7. That one has aged even better. And the biotech ETF I mentioned that I own has beaten the Mag 7 by over 40% since we published that video. I don't have a crystal ball and I'm not always right, but I am an actual investment professional and chartered financial analyst. And I can promise you that everything I say has been well researched and is what I actually believe. So If you want to drastically improve your life by becoming a better investor, this would be a great time to hit that subscribe button because everything that we're seeing suggests that the next decade of market leadership could look very different from the last one, and we're going to be covering it every step of the way. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll look forward to seeing you in the next one.